Welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, ready to go over Friday's two-game slate. The NBA playoffs keep going, and these slates just get smaller, right? So we got two games. These slates are dicey. Yesterday, I liked Maxey as a leverage off of Embiid and just in general off of Brunson and Halliburton and Siakam, all these guys that were similar price, and he was the lowest owned. I really thought he'd show up, and he was not good. So if you went with me on Maxey, you probably didn't have a very good night. I did hit some things. I noted that DiVincenzo had been struggling badly, but he continued to be a very good leverage play, and he got like 51 fantasy points. So if you went with DiVincenzo, that might have helped you out. So hopefully you did okay. Hopefully I helped you yesterday, and hopefully I can help you again today. This video is sponsored by DFS Hero. If you are in search for a new lineup optimizer or want to try out a new tool, give them a shot. You can get a 15% off discount with our link in the video description below. And they also are running a contest at DraftKings right now, so you can try to take advantage of that. All right, so let's dive right into it. First game of the night is not very appealing. We got the Cavs against the Magic. Huge game 6. The Cavs are up 3-2 in the series. They are 4-point road underdogs with a game total of 200.5. Pretty gross. Cavs individually have a team total of 98.25. So, I mean, they're projected to lose here on the road and have this series go to game 7. I don't really think they will. Nobody has won on the road yet in this series, but I think eventually, that's probably going to happen. The Cavs are the better team. They kind of let the Magic hang around too long. And it's kind of like, fuck around and find out kind of situation. I don't think the Cavs want to head into a game 7. So I expect them to show up here. One major note to keep in mind when looking at the Cavs is Jarrett Allen. He missed last game. He is questionable yet again. So if Jarrett Allen is in, I do like him quite a bit at 7K flat. He has dominated the Magic in a couple games in the series. He did struggle in Orlando, and he thrived in Cleveland. That's kind of noisy though. Looking too much at home versus away splits, it gets you in trouble. And just like in general, we can't only look at this playoff series when we look at the playoffs. We can't be like, oh no, he's had a terrible series. If we did that and look at what DiVincenzo did last night, right? Or like, oh, Maxey's been wrecking them all series, and then Maxey comes up short in the biggest game of the series. So we can't always do it that way. But he has had a lot of success against them, and he's just a constant double-double threat. He can have a block party any given night, and he's just too cheap for what he can do. So if he's in, I do like him, and he's not garnering ownership right now, mostly because he's questionable, so that could change a little bit. Keep an eye on that. If he's out, Evan Mobley would look great at 7.3K. His price has come up from 6.7. Obviously, he looked a lot better at 6.7. He looks really good, though. He had a pretty good game last game with Jarrett Allen out. Really good game, 45 fantasy points. He is always a double-double threat when he's out there. And obviously, he can pop as a scorer and just get more opportunities across the board with Jarrett Allen out. Darius Garland, I was trying to get off of chalky Darius Garland last slate. Didn't work out. He did really well. At least he was off to a really good start. I think he ended up getting 37 fantasy points for 6.1 salary. Yeah, he was good chalk apparently. I still think if he's going to be really chalky, it's a pretty good spot on a 2-game slate to try to find leverage. Is Darius Garland a good play in a vacuum at 6.5K? Sure. But the Cavs have struggled so far on the road in this series, worth noting. They are underdogs, slow-paced game, and the Magic play good defense. So it's not a good spot at all. It's really not a good spot for Cavs in general, but it's 2 games, so you have to still look at Cleveland. I just personally, if I'm doing one lineup, I'm probably going to look to leverage that ownership. He's coming in at 31%. So if I can go pay up for Donovan Mitchell or find another guy in that price range that is less owned, right now Garland's at 31, Spida is at 23%. And my God, can Spida just actually show up in the series as a DFS player? It has not happened yet at all. The scoring has been solid. I'm sure he's had issues with their defense. He's not shooting very efficiently. Literally one game over 41% shooting in the series. So no doubt about it, he's having a tough time. But the peripherals have not been there whatsoever. He's had 41 plus fantasy points in 3 of the 5 games so far, which isn't terrible, especially with his price coming down to a reasonable salary. But yeah, the ceiling hasn't been there. That said, game 6, massive game. They can end the series here with just a huge outing by Mitchell. I'm willing to roll the dice there and leverage the Chalky Garland play with a Mitchell play for sure. At 8.4K, still very much in play. Really cool play for GPPs. So I like him quite a bit. Another chalky play that I didn't want to eat, and I said, you know what? I guess I bet you anything. The second I tell you to leverage Max Strus ownership, he's going to go off. Sure enough, he had like 36 fantasy points last game and got hot shooting. He had a terrible series. It's not a good spot. I never like to eat a chalky shooter. If all they do is shoot, then why are we eating that chalk? He's coming in at 35% again. I'll double down there. Maybe I'll be wrong. I agree that 5.1K is a good price for a starter in a playoff game. But if Strus is not hitting his shots, that's going to be bad chalk in a hurry. So I have no qualms about getting different there or just punting, as a leverage. Like, for instance, Isaac Okoro, I think he played a good deal last game. 23 minutes last game. So he's looking at 20 to 25 minutes, probably at 3.5K. He's a decent punt. If Jared Allen is out, we could actually look at the corpse of Marcus Morris. He played 26 minutes in the last game with Jared Allen out. Do I really want to trust my night with Marcus Morris at 3.3K? Not really, but I do think he is a viable punt if Allen is out. So yeah, I like Evan Mobley. I think Spida is a pretty good tournament play. If you want to eat the chalk with Strus and Garland, go for it. It's not like they're bad plays. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that if they're going to be really chalky, it's hard when it's only a 2-game slate. But if they're going to be super chalky, let's try to leverage at least one of them and see if it works out in our favor. On the other side, you do have the Magic, obviously. Sorry, I didn't put that ticker up with the spread and the total. Again, not a good spot. It's just not a good pace game. It's not a good defensive matchup game. These games have been pretty low scoring. I think the last game, Game 5, was the only game so far in this series where both teams scored over 100 points. So, yeah, it's pretty fucking gross out there. That said, Paulo Banchero projects well. He's going to be really chalky at 52% ownership. So, speaking of maybe let's leverage something, let's not pay for 8.3 Banchero maybe and go pay for half the ownership with Spida. That's probably what I'm going to do there. I think it's like a double whammy with Spida. Go get Spida. You leverage the chalky Cavs and you leverage the chalky Banchero at the same time. That said, he's a pretty good price. Him and Franz Wagner basically are taking turns wrecking in this series. Last game, Banchero had 54 fantasy points. The game before, he had 25. And in that game, Franz Wagner had 60. The game before that, Banchero had 61 fantasy points. So he definitely has had success in the series. He can go off, and he is a bit too cheap. My only issue is he's going to be really owned. And it is a 2-game slate, so sometimes we don't want to get too carried away with all the ownership. But when a guy is that expensive and he's going to be 52% owned, that is when I would definitely look for a way around that if I can, if it makes sense, especially with the next game being a lot more appealing and there being guys in that price range that I like a lot better. So I haven't looked at their own ownership yet for this video. We'll just see how they compare to his just ghastly ownership. Franz Wagner is a little bit more appealing at 52% owned just because he's $1,000 cheaper. He has had success in this series as well. So if I'm going to pay for a guy in a tough spot that's going to be owned, I would rather it be the guy who's cheaper. So it's going to cost me less to get him and eat that chalk. So I do prefer Franz over Banchero. I think as far as usage and ceilings go, they're both viable, and you can eat the chalk if you want to. I just would rather not eat Magic chalk unless it's cheap. The Magic chalk I do like, though, that I will be eating on this slate is Wendell Carter at 4.4K, 53% owned. I don't really give a shit. He played over 30 minutes last game. If Jared Allen is out, especially, he just has an easier path to success. If Jared Allen is in, I still think they need his size. If he can avoid foul trouble and actually be productive, he should smash at 4.4K. Jalen Suggs also looks really, really good at 5.7K. The price has come up a little bit, and he does have kind of a low floor, but he played 39 minutes last game. A big part of that was Gary Harris getting injured. Gary Harris is now questionable for tonight. I think that's pretty big, actually, because, number one, I don't want to play Gary Harris. He is basically Max Strus, the worst possible version, where he can hit 5 or 6 threes, But even whether he does or not, he's not going to do anything else. So I do not want to play Gary Harris. If Gary Harris starts at 3.6K, he is viable, but he's going to be chalky if he plays at 27% right now, even with a questionable status. That scares me. So that is absolutely a guy I would be looking to get away from, even more so than the ownership plays I've been talking about. And if Gary Harris is why I lose on the 2-game slate, fuck it. I don't even care. Like, that's so stupid. But if he's out, guys like Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, even Joe Ingles, whoever ends up starting in his place would honestly be like a lock for me, just because they'd be so cheap and they'd be probably locked into 20, 25 minutes for sure. I do think those guys, if Gary Harris is out, would end up kind of splitting the minutes. But whoever starts would look the best. Right now, I think Cole Anthony looks the best. He projects the best. But, and then when somebody moves into the starting lineup in place of Harris, if that indeed is what happens, then you could take a gamble on Fultz or Ingles or even Caleb Houston, whoever it ends up being, off the bench. But there's DNP risk. There is risk of them just splitting the minutes and these guys getting like 8 to 10 minutes or something. So it's risky for sure. Jonathan Isaac is in play at 4.2K, but his minutes came down. They've been coming down in general. He started off the series with 29 minutes in game 1. He hasn't topped 22 minutes since, so that's a bit dicey. He is a good price, though, and he is a good point per minute guy, but he's 43% owned. So I imagine if Harris is out, he could have a path to more minutes just naturally. So that would be one extra reason to maybe consider him and kind of ignore the reduced minutes. But in general, chalky-ass Isaac, I don't think I'm super interested in that. I'll eat the Suggs chalk, I'll eat the Wendell chalk, and I will eat the value chalk if Harris is out. But that's where it stops for me. All right, here we go. The game of the night is the Clippers and the Mavs. This is also game 6. The Mavs are up 3-2 after winning the last game. Kawhi Leonard remains out, and Terrence Mann is questionable. So this is pretty massive. I mean, it doesn't look like Kawhi Leonard's going to be back for this series, even if it makes to a game 7. I don't think it's going to. If you believe the NBA is rigged, bet hard on the Cavs and Clippers, because all the other series are over, and you just would imagine that these series would end tonight too. This game is in Dallas, though, so obviously the Mavs have the edge. They are 8-point favorites. The game is a 208 total. I don't really have a lean as far as like if it's going to stay competitive or not. All I know is it is the better game for pace, and it's the better game for upside for scoring. It's also a really good spot for high-end usage with Kawhi out and just value in general. So with no Kawhi, Paul George looks awesome. We were in the same spot a couple days ago, and I said you have to play James Harden over Paul George. As it turns out, you didn't have to play either of them because they both kind of shat the bed. Harden was way worse, but honestly, again, I'm going to go back and double down and go Harden. He's coming at half the ownership of George. He projects very much the same, and he's only $100 more. Harden really came up small in that game 5. Probably will again today, right? Because Harden has not been known as a clutch playoff performer. But it is a good spot. It's a huge game they have to win. And all the numbers tell me Harden is the better tournament play right now. Obviously, ownership could flip, so definitely update things and check later in the day. But if Harden's going to be 20% and Paul George is going to be 42%, give me Harden every time. I do think you can play them together just because there's so much usage there. But what I would personally rather do is fade Paul George, bank on a massive Harden game at half the ownership, and then go get the value that the Clippers have to offer. I will eat the 4.9K Norm chalk. No problem there. No Kawhi. Norm should play 30 to 35 minutes. He's going to try scoring a lot. If he doesn't hit his shots, he's going to fail, but I'm going to roll the dice. If Terrence Mann is in, he's playable at 4.8. If he's out, I love Russell Westbrook at 5K. I liked him the other slate ago when we talked about the Mavs and Clippers. He did not pan out. But if no Terrence Mann, his about 20-minute role should see a boost. And I would imagine he's such a good per minute guy that it's worth the risk. It's worth taking that shot. Right now, he's not owned. I would imagine if Mann is out, he'd be fairly owned. I'm not really super interested in Zubac with a price up to 6.6K now. He's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just a salary play. He is going to be unowned right now, 10% ownership. So a bit of a leverage on, chalkier Cavs guys like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and just like Wendell Carter, massive chalk. But those guys, the Cavs guys have a better ceiling, and Wendell Carter is way, way cheaper. So I think Zubac is in like that no man's land of like, if you want to just get different, you can do that. But I don't really like him at this price. The last guy is a really, really good punt here, Amir Coffey. I would much rather punt with him than Gary Harris. So if Gary Harris is in, fuck Gary Harris to the moon. I want Amir Coffey. If Gary Harris is out, I'll entertain the Orlando Magic guys. I still have interest in Coffey either way. I believe he played 29 minutes last game. 27. So he was really not good. He wasn't good at all. 6 fantasy points, 11 fantasy points in 23 minutes the prior game. So he's not a great permanent guy. The usage is going to go through George, Harden, Norm, maybe even Russ. So he's very much like fourth fiddle there. But if he's going to play 25 to maybe even 30 minutes at 3.6K, we should definitely consider that. So right now he's carrying about 16% ownership. If Man is out, that's going to spike. His minutes will go up. So I don't really care about Man's status right now. If Man is in, I'd have a little bit of interest in Man. I have a lot of interest in Coffey because his ownership might end up coming down then. All right, that's going to do. Oh, I almost forgot the Mavs. Oh, man, it's ready to go already with a 16-minute mark. Lots to say for a 2-game slate, surprisingly. All right, on the other side, we have Luka. He comes in with the best projection, 40% boom rating. He's going to be massive chalk, but I think this is a good slate to just eat that chalk and move along. You could leverage that ownership with Kyrie Irving at 8.9K. I don't have a problem with that. That's a fine strategy. You know me. I'm all about leveraging ownership. But tonight I'm just going to eat the Luka chalk. He's been good in this series. He has not had like that massive Luka ceiling game, but he's had 58. He's had 52 plus fantasy points in every single game in this series, and 61 plus fantasy points in 3 of the 5 games. So he's enjoyed a good series. He just hasn't had like that 90-point blowout game. You better believe if you fade chalk Luka, this is the game he's going to do it. So I'm just not going to fade him. I'm going to take those raw Luka points and get my guaranteed 55 to 60 fantasy points and, find other ways to get different. But if you want to get different, Kyrie is a viable play. And pairing them is fine. You can pair them if you want to. That's just not really what I like to do. I don't really love pairing 2 studs on the same team together because the odds of them both smashing at a high level aren't that great. PG Washington, as far as minutes and price go, looks pretty good. I like him just fine at 5.9K. He face planted in the last game, but that's going to happen. PJ, we got a PJ. But he's totally fine if you get to him. He's not a core play whatsoever, but he's not going to be owned, and he plays a good amount, and he can pop off as a scorer. With no Tim Hardaway Jr. still, Derrick Jones Jr. feels like a core play at 4.6K. Obviously, he can do nothing when he's out there. He's not the best per minute guy, but he's going to play 30-plus minutes. So I'll eat the 26% owned chalk. That's fine with me. At center, I guess play the ownership game again. Derek Lively is a fine value at 4.1K. He's coming in pretty chalky. I think if I'm going to play one of the Dallas centers, I'd just go Gafford, eat the 600 extra bucks, and get an 8% owned value play. Eventually, you would think Gafford, who can be hyper efficient, eventually you'd think he'd have a good game in this series. So why not bank on it tonight? If you end up in that range and you need somebody, I think I like Gafford a little bit more. As far as value goes, these guys are not getting a ton of minutes. Josh Green, Dante Exum, you can take a flyer at 3.2 and 3K. I just don't think we need to. They're not getting enough burn. But with Tim Hardaway Jr. out, it's viable. It's a viable tournament option. The guy I would rather go with is Maxi Kleber. He's getting about 20 minutes off the bench with THJ out, so he's probably the best value there for sure. All right, so that does it for me. I went a little bit prematurely there, but now we're ready to rock. Hopefully that helps you out. If it does, please give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel so you can get alerted to more videos. We may be pushing out an MLB DFS video for today out as well, but I'd like to get this out early to get your process started for NBA DFS. All right, that does it for me. Good luck tonight, and thanks for watching.